Well, I think my mom's story is very almost like archetypal of what so many Americans are going through today, kind of realizing that something is not quite right when it comes to our own health, the health of our kids, the health of our parents. People are so sick in our country and they're getting sicker. And we're put on this chronic disease, sort of pill taking surgery treadmill, and yet we're not really getting better. So
Mm,
my mom's story really just is so emblematic of this and played off so much of my own experience in medicine as a surgeon. So
mhm.
my mom, uh, she was very vibrant and, from the outside looked pretty healthy, but in her 40s, she had me. I was an almost 12-pound baby.
Oh my
I was
goodness.
big. Everyone kind of congratulated for that. No one really thought much of it. She had trouble losing the baby weight. She
Mm,
was in her 50s, had a tough menopause. Then in her 60s, she started getting, the diagnoses that so many Americans have: high blood pressure. Here's an ACE inhibitor. High cholesterol. Here's a statin, prescribed 200 million times per year in the US. High blood sugar. Here's metformin. Very common. This is, pre-diabetes. It's a pre-disease. Nothing to worry about. And then all of a sudden she's 72 and she's hiking with my dad near their house in Northern California and she gets a pain in her belly. And that's unusual for her. It lasts for a couple days. So she goes to her primary care doctor. They order a CT scan and it turns out it's stage 4 widely metastatic pancreatic cancer. And 13 days later, she was dead.
mm.
And, at the time of her death, she was seeing what a lot of people would call like the best doctors in the world. She was she was being seen at Stanford. She was being seen at Mayo Clinic, really access to high quality health care. And the oncologist looked at my family in the eyes and said, I'm so sorry. This was so unlucky, the pancreatic cancer. And knowing what I know about really more a connected root cause perspective on health, to me, it's very clear that this cancer was not actually unlucky. It was totally predictable.
Hmm.
But in our Western medical system that is so reactive, it's so siloed, it's like whack-a-mole medicine. They saw all those things that my mom had throughout the past 30 years as separated, isolated things: the big baby, the trouble losing the baby weight, the tough menopause, all the metabolic issues: blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, and then cancer. In our system, in our reductionist Western medical system, they all look separate and it seems unlucky. But what I'm really, I think, on this planet to share, and what my book is about and what all my work is about, is that through a different lens, through a root cause lens, through a true physiology lens, what we would understand is that all those symptoms and diseases she had are actually trunks of the exact same tree. And that tree is metabolic dysfunction. It's a core physiologic problem that's affecting 93% of American adults have some aspect of metabolic dysfunction. Some of the most obvious ones you'd think about it would be like diabetes and obesity, but actually cancer, heart disease, stroke, depression, anxiety, having a big baby, which is called fetal macrosomia,
Hmm.
trouble
And
losing
is
the belly
that
fat.
caused by, just because I don't know, and a lot of people don't know the through line of the different diagnoses that you're talking about, like going back to you being a 12-pound baby, the only understanding I have of why that typically happens is if a woman has gestational
Right.
diabetes. So is that part of what you're talking about? And all of these things are somehow connected to each other?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the trunk of this tree, this metabolic dysfunction, it can show up like gestational diabetes. And at its very core, and not to get too science and
That's
technical,
okay.
but in our society today, with the rapid changes in our diet and our lifestyle over the past just like 50, 75 years, really since World War II, our industrialized diet, our chronic stress from our devices, we're getting 25% less sleep on average than we were 100 years ago. The
Wow.
incredible amount of synthetic toxins in our food, water, air, and homes, it's fundamentally caused a problem with our cells that is super fundamental. It's a breaking of this metabolic machine in our cells. And metabolism is how we convert food to cellular energy. And the reason that this can look like so many different diseases is because if you have a problem converting food energy to cellular energy to power our cells, in different cell types, this can look like all different things. If it's, in a liver cell, it can look like fatty liver disease. In a blood vessel cell, it can look like heart disease. It can look like in the brain, it can look like depression and anxiety. So essentially, there's this core issue that's caused by our lifestyle and our food system that is really breaking our bodies on a fundamental level, showing up as all these different diseases across the spectrum. And our healthcare system is totally, totally blind to it, which is why they wait until the symptoms emerge and they treat those isolated symptoms, but they never get to their actual root cause, because that's not the way our system works. It's about separation, not connection. You know, you look at the trends that are happening today, which is that the more we spend on healthcare, we're spending $4.5 trillion a year on healthcare in America, and outcomes are getting worse. The more studies we do, the worse the outcomes are getting. The more specialized we get in healthcare, the worse the outcomes are getting. You know, it's sort of the definition of unsustainability. And the reason is because we're actually focusing on the wrong problem. We're focusing on reactive symptom-based medicine as opposed to the connected root cause that's actually underlying most of the American diseases that we're facing today. And in the case of the big baby, you know, in a mother who has this metabolic dysfunction, her blood sugar starts rising. That then transfers in the blood through the placenta to the baby. So the baby is exposed to that high blood sugar. That then causes the body to make more insulin in the little fetus's body. And that insulin is a pro-growth hormone that causes the baby to put on more weight and more fat. So it's how those metabolic blood sugar issues are actually showing up in the fetus. And then being born above about 8.5 pounds, which is considered fetal macrosomia, that sets up the baby for metabolic issues for the rest of their life, and also is a sign of the mother having issues. So really at every step along the spectrum, it was all pointing to the same thing, but the healthcare system is totally blind because it's so focused on reaction. Really, if you look at the way the system is designed, it's so hyper-specialized. We have over 42 medical specialties, and really, like, to climb the ranks as an American doctor, it actually is getting more and more specialized. So I trained in ear, nose, and throat surgery, and to really be at the top of my field, I would actually specialize further into either ear, nose, or throat, you know, become a rhinologist, a laryngologist, or an otologist. And then even within those specialties, you might focus on one specific disease and become the world expert in that. So specialization is literally built into the very foundation of prestige in our system. And what that does is it gets doctors to, you know, really ignore the rest of the body and how things might be connected. There's also a financial incentive for that, right? The business model of our healthcare system is to do more to more people over long periods of time. The stark reality, the stark economic reality of the American healthcare system, which is what needs to change if we're going to actually improve the health outcomes of America. But the stark economic reality is that every institution that touches our health, from hospitals to clinics to pharma, even to insurance companies, will make more money if you are sick and less money if you are healthy. And so chronic diseases, these isolated chronic diseases like what my mom had, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, the system profits off treating those as separate things that you do things to for long periods of time, chronic disease management. So not actually healing it, but managing it. And so because that's built into the deep finances of the largest and fastest growing industry in the United States, which is the healthcare industry, there is no incentive for people to back up and look at all of the things going on and say, wait a minute, maybe we're looking at this wrong. Maybe there's something more fundamental, the trunk of the tree leading to all of this. Maybe we could just intervene there and a lot of this stuff would melt away. And that is the reality biologically.